All right. Good afternoon, everybody. And first off, thank you very much to CITIC Telecom for inviting me here to speak with you all today in what is my first in-person event, I think, since 2019. So it's very exciting, and I guess we do have to abide by the COVID restrictions, but hopefully others are as excited about that as I am. So today, I'll be talking a little bit about the politics, policy, and business considerations for data. And that probably dovetails quite nicely with some of the other operational people you'll hear from in terms of how you can use data for your operations. But hopefully this should kickstart off the conversation with a nice framework, and we can go from there. Today, this is going to be a very quick presentation. There's a lot to go through, but hopefully I'm not going to spend too much time. And hopefully it will give you all a nice introduction and some food for thought in terms of how we can approach data and what this means for business. But I think the best thing to do is to start off generally, broadly, to just kind of have a recap and talk about why using data-driven solutions is important for business, particularly when we talk about a 21st century business model. So why does data matter? In short, emerging technologies are new drivers of growth, and digital solutions these days are integral to multinational firms as they try and enhance their operations and enhance the services they provide in the market. This was a trend that was already evident before the pandemic, but it's been accelerated by COVID-19, particularly as companies try and deal with mitigating supply-side disruptions or other risks, or as consumers go online. I'm sure I'm not alone in this room in that I've spent a lot of time purchasing things on, say, Taobao or on Amazon this past year when all their stores were shut. And that's something that I think is going to continue for the rest of the future, and it's going to remain a big consideration for business. Traditional ICT is evolving, and it's not just a thing around tech providers or tech solutions operators. It's data adaptation across a number of different sectors, including finance, auto, healthcare. These are things we'll come back to at the later part of the presentation. But I think one thing that's also important to remember is that while this is a very positive outlook, while there's a lot of opportunity, there are also a number of risks, particularly when we think about Asia, particularly when we think about China, in terms of how we can use data and what some of the constraints might be as we think about our data strategies. China's digital market in particular is vast. Estimates from the Chinese Academy of Information and Communication Technology, which is a government think tank, estimate that the digital economy already reached a third of Chinese GDP in 2019. It's probably bigger in 2020 with the online migration caused by COVID. And this is something that's probably going to continue not just in China, not just in Hong Kong, or mainland China, not just in Hong Kong, but just globally in general. Because to borrow some of the takeaways from one of our own ECM clients, COVID-19 has created a new digital hypercycle. People are demanding to go online, and they're demanding online functionality in ways that I think a lot of companies weren't expecting before. And so companies, both as digital users and providers, need to understand how they can leverage these trends and take advantage of these trends. At the same time, there are risks. In the mainland Chinese market, for example, Chinese companies are very entrenched, and so if you're a foreign company, that's a strategic consideration for you. Government policies across a number of different markets tend to support local innovation, particularly against multinationals. So just this morning, for example, we saw a new decision in India whereby MasterCard is no longer to issue new cards because of data regulatory requirements, and they've raised some issues around protectionism in terms of Indian companies who might be competitors to MasterCard. And this new emphasis on national security and data security is posing operational challenges for businesses in this region particularly. We'll go into that a little bit later in the presentation. So how can companies use data in their operations? I think the next presentations are probably going to explain this in a much more sophisticated way than I will. But just to give a little bit of context into why this is important and why various industries are really excited about these prospects. Because as you can see on this slide, we can see data application is very different across sectors. Oftentimes we talk about the big tech firms, Google, Facebook, Microsoft. But data is being used in a number of different ways by data providers. In the auto sector, we're seeing data used to ensure GPS and safety and autonomous driving functionality. In healthcare, we're seeing it used for personalized treatment, wearable devices, remote care. In finance, we're seeing things around mobile finance and digital currency, financial modeling, as well as fraud monitoring and prevention. And then in manufacturing, we have things around predictive maintenance and forecasting for production and logistics. This is quite critical, I think, because it suggests that if companies are able to use data correctly, they can identify new or potential consumer segments, they can refine their existing products and services, they can handle risk management and prevent future risks from emerging, and they can use pattern recognition to optimize future workflows and output. So one of the case studies that I want to emphasize that we learned from one of our members of the Economist Corporate Network, which is a C-suite level organization that we have at the EIU, is how to use data in your supply chain specifically, particularly amid this idea of supply chain agility. How do you respond quickly to shocks and events? And how do you use data in a time of uncertainty? So for example, data can help you increase visibility. It optimizes resource allocation when there's a production shock. Say your factory in Indonesia has gone offline because of COVID. You need to reallocate your resources to Vietnam or mainland China. This could in turn help reduce errors, it can reduce wastage, it can dovetail with other costs and other considerations around reducing input costs and reducing energy intensity, meeting climate goals. It can also improve safety. It lets you, if you have the right predictive models in place based on various sensors and technology, you can use big data to monitor and predict equipment failures. That's good for the health of your workforce. It's good for identifying weak points in your production chain. And in addition to that, it might allow you to streamline some of your operations. So what this client told us is that they're able to use pattern recognition and machine learning to see which inputs they need as part of a production cycle in terms of the timeliness they need, the inventory levels, which suppliers offer the best costs, which suppliers offer the best logistics options. And because that's all automated, it allows, again, costs to be reduced and resources to be put elsewhere in ways that are more profitable for that company. The second thing is, how do you respond to new consumer demand? So I mentioned this digital hypercycle as consumers are all going online. I think digital literacy globally has preserved a lot of retail strength across all markets. But what we're seeing and what we're hearing back from our clients is that there's a new demand for customization. Not just in terms of, I want this product or this service to meet my needs in a very specific way, but also demand for real-time, instantaneous service, whereby you can engage with customers in ways that ensure they're going to keep coming back to you. That inherently involves a focus on speed. It inherently raises questions around how companies can implement this while keeping their costs low. And then it raises questions operationally in terms of, do companies have the right internal platforms, the right internal interfaces to capitalize on this changing consumer demand? And this also raises a bunch of challenges. So for example, if you have a digital platform, what happens when that platform goes offline? Do you have a plan B? Do you have the people in place who can resolve this quickly? It raises questions on reverse logistics. So I mentioned online shopping before. If I receive a package from ASOS, a clothing retailer, and I don't like it, how do I return it? Where are the drop-off points? What are the procedures that the company can use that they can ensure that their product comes back to them in a safe and secure way so they can process a refund? And what does that mean if you're trying to reach customers who are in very remote locations, say parts of rural China or second, third tier cities in China? And finally, I think this raises a question around people and talent and the workforce. This is something that I think is probably relevant to everyone in this room, in the sense that all companies are thinking about digital strategies, all companies are going online, but do the people that are currently in this company, do they have the right digital literacy? Do they have the right talent in identifying what data is valuable? Do they have the right insights in being able to act on that data? And then I think more critically, in this era of uncertainty and risk, do we have the right cybersecurity literacy? Do we know that there are various vulnerabilities in our organization that could be exploited? And are our people, including those who've been with us for many years, do they know what the risks are and how to manage those risks?